Welcome back to the On the Road Sports Talk Show. Today I have a very special guest. We're speaking with Suzie McConnell-Serio, a gold medal Olympian and 2008 inductee into the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame. Suzie, thank you for coming on to the show.
Thanks for having me, Landon.
I want to start at the beginning of your basketball journey, I guess. You come from a basketball family. Your sisters Kathy and Maureen played, and your brother Tim, and now your nephew TJ is having a breakout year on the Indiana Pacers as well. What were family pickup games like growing up?
Oh, that's basically how I got my start, was growing up in a big family and everyone played. And actually, I have an older brother, Tom, who's the one who started it all. And it was crazy. We had a hoop in our backyard. We always were always out in the backyard playing basketball. We had a large group of friends in the neighborhood that would always come over. And when the games got too big, we would go to the local park. But they were very competitive. It was very competitive growing up in my family. It didn't matter what it was that we played. And I grew up in the city. So when we played outside, we were playing in our backyard, but we were also playing in the streets, whether it was Nerf football, wiffle ball. It didn't matter what sport we were playing. It was competitive, but it was fun. But basically growing up in a family that size and in a small community is where I got my start. And when I started playing basketball, actually, we didn't have a girls team at our local Catholic grade school that we had gone to, Our Lady of Loretto. And I would go to my brother's practices and watch them play. And eventually the coach had asked my parents if I could play on the boys team. So in fourth and fifth grades, I played on the boys team. My sister Kathy, who's a year younger than I am, she played with me for 1 year. And then we started a girls program after that. And we never looked back when we played basketball throughout our whole lives.
That's amazing. Definitely fueled your competitive fire, it sounds like, at an early age. So moving on then to later in your career, you played in the 1986 FIBA World Championship, which was hosted by the Soviet Union. And at the time, I know many athletes from surrounding areas of the USSR, now Russia, were forced to play for them at the time. Did you speak with anyone that was in that situation, and what was the energy like kind of in that Cold War era time?
We really weren't involved in any of that at all. I mean, we were kind of isolated in where we were playing in the World Championships. And it was definitely a different experience. I was very fortunate that basketball has really taken me all over the world with playing with USA Basketball and the opportunities that, I was able to have through basketball. And Russia was one of the places that we were playing, as you said, in that time. But we were somewhat isolated. But when we did go out around the town and shopping, I mean, you would see, military with their guns. And so it was a little intimidating, but I always felt safe because we were always as a group. And when you're with USA Basketball, they take very good care of you. So there are really not many concerns when you're traveling.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting time, but I'm glad that it didn't interfere in any way with what you were there to do. So you also have had a decorated coaching career. You've coached on the high school level, Oakland Catholic in Pittsburgh, college level at Duquesne and Pitt, and on the professional level with the Minnesota Lynx. And you also won the 2004 Coach of the Year award there. What are the differences or different challenges that come with each level of coaching?
When you coach, you feel like it doesn't matter what level it is, the game is the same. You're still teaching the same concepts. You're still preparing your players and teaching every day in practice and making them better, getting them to develop chemistry as a team. So a lot of the things are the same, doesn't matter. I mean, I've even coached second and third graders, fourth graders at my daughter's teams when they were younger. So it depends on the level that you're coaching, your style and the types of things that you run and the schemes that you have as a coach. But when you're coaching at different levels, when you look at coaching high school, I looked at helping these players develop and become better players and help them accomplish the goals that they wanted and be able to, some of them wanted to play in college and at the Division I level. So you're, also helping with that aspect, and you're dealing with teenagers. that, they're dealing with school, they're dealing with boyfriends, they're dealing with their families. So you're dealing with all of that at that age. At the collegiate level, it's a whole new ball game. You're talking about recruiting, and now you're trying to recruit those high school kids and convince them that your school is the best place for them, and your coaching staff is the best staff that can help them accomplish what they want and become the person that they want to become throughout their college years. So that's probably the biggest challenge when you're talking about coaching at the collegiate level, is the recruiting and getting them to believe in you as a coach and convince them that your school is the best for them. At the WNBA level, it's more of a business. You're looking at drafting the top college players in their programs and coming out. You're looking at overseas players. You're looking at trying to get free agents to sign with you. There are trades to be had. And then it's getting them in a short period of time, because it's a summer season. You're looking for them to develop that quick chemistry that you need to be successful. So, I had seen all levels. I think when you're teaching the game and working with players, which that's the aspect of coaching that I love the most, but you do have to deal with other things at different levels.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you figured it out on all levels. You've enjoyed high levels of success on all of them. And I was actually going to touch on that success at the pro level a little bit. When you coached the Minnesota Lynx, you led the 2004 team to a playoff berth in the 3 seed. And many predicted that they would be finishing near the bottom that year. How did you manage that dramatic turnaround? Because I kind of feel like that sort of thing comes down to the culture of the team at a certain point, just keeping your head up and not listening to what anyone has to say.
Well, it was interesting because when I had gone to the WNBA level, I went from coaching at the high school level. So it was a big jump. And, to me, I felt it was somewhat of a risk. I didn't really know how the players would respond to me as a coach. I was younger. I had played in the WNBA, but I was coaching high school. And I give a lot of credit to the players that I had the opportunity to coach with the Minnesota Lynx, because they were fantastic. I mean, they bought into what we were trying to do as a coaching staff. And me personally, as the head coach, I thought they had immediate respect for me. I think they were hungry to be successful. They hadn't been successful and made the playoffs. And I think, we were able to win some games early, and we had won some close games early. And I think the more success we had throughout the season, I think the more they believed in us that we would be able to win and be successful. And when players buy in, you're very lucky as a coach, because then you have continued success and they play harder for you and they believe in you and they trust you in those situations. So I was very fortunate the first couple of years I was with the Minnesota Lynx, that was the opportunity I had in coaching those players.
Yeah, it sounds like the momentum just built throughout the year and turned into a great season there for the Lynx. I was also going to touch here on some things that got uncovered in this last March Madness here. A lot of disparity between the men's and the women's conditions were exposed largely on social media. And you played in a time before social media, so I was just wondering, have these been around? I'm assuming they've been around since when you were playing as well, but social media was not there to expose these disparities. What was that like, and what do you think can be done about it?
Well, I mean, the tournament was so different this year. Both teams were in bubbles, with the men in Indianapolis and the women were in San Antonio. And, I'm an outsider looking in. I'm sitting at home watching the NCAA tournament. I'm not there. I don't see what's going on. So it's a little different for me having a perspective. When I played back then, you didn't see any of the differences, because you were, when I played, you were playing on a team's home court sometimes. And then the further round you went to, then you were at a neutral site. The men, they get the exposure. They've been on TV. The one thing that I loved about the women's tournament this year is that every game was televised. It was on, different stations that you could turn and you could watch any game you wanted. And that's the first time that I remember this happening. So that was exciting to me. When you look at the weight room, now I will say that having been in college athletics, that I've seen like the men's teams that I was at the universities, the men lifted like days of games. The men would lift day before the game. The men would lift. I mean, guys were constantly in the weight room. So I can see on the men's side of it that that's why they wanted to have a weight room for those players in all 64 teams. The women wanted to do it for what they said, what their reasoning was, for 32 teams. And being on a women's side, women didn't lift. We didn't lift the day before a game, and we certainly didn't lift the day of a game. So when you went to the first rounds in 64 and 32, a lot of players weren't really going to lift weights, but they did have to be there prior to those games for quarantining and all of that. So I can see both sides of it. And it's unfortunate that social media, or fortunately, you can look at it both ways, that the women, posted it and the disparities of it. And it is unfair, because if the women wanted that, then they really should have had access to that, getting ready for the tournament. But, this was a unique year with the pandemic and, being in a bubble. So hopefully, the NCAA has learned some lessons moving forward, that there won't be that much of a disparity. And then you looked at the gear and the different things that, they were getting. But you can have people out there that are continuing to fight for women and hopefully strive for equality.
Definitely. I hope that that becomes more equal in years to come. I do think it'll be easier to assess in a normal basketball year, non-COVID impacted, for sure. But my last question for you today is just going to be about the evolution of the game as a whole. The three-point shot has really become more popular through the years, and I just wanted to know your take on that. Was that something you started to see when you played? Or, I mean, Steph Curry gets a lot of credit for that, and that's more recent, but do you think that's been building up a little longer than maybe people give it credit for?
I don't really want to show my age, but the three-point line was initiated my freshman year in college. So that's how far back it's gone. But in high school, I never played with the three-point line. It started in college, and yes, it was a part of the game, back then. But it has truly changed the game, because you look at when you watch games, men's and women's, a lot of times it's either a three or a layup. The mid-range game is sometimes a lost art. And ironically, I'm helping my husband coach at the high school level here in Pittsburgh, at Upper St. Clair High School. And, I want our players to be complete players. So we're working on the three-point game, the mid-range game, getting to the rim, so that they are complete players. But, obviously when you see games on TV and you see these NBA players, WNBA players, even college players lighting it up from three, and you're never out of a game with a three-point line. You can see games that have a 20-point lead and teams just fight and they find a way to get back in the game. So it has definitely changed over the course of the years that I had been involved in the game of basketball.
Yeah, definitely. I would say it makes the game more exciting, but I agree with your point that everyone should be taught the mid-range game as well. We can't forget about it. But Suzie, thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Good luck to you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's all for On the Rhoad Sports Talk Show here, Season 3, wrapping up. Hope you enjoyed it and hope to come back with you a Season 4 here shortly.